April 4th, 1945. Twilight falls over Merkers, a German mining village 20 kilometers from the front line. Two French women, displaced workers in tattered clothes, flag down an American military police jeep. Their hands tremble, not from the cold, but from what they've seen. Trucks, they whisper in broken German. Trucks in the night. Crates too heavy for 3 men. Soldiers with machine guns. Something wichtig, important, hidden 2,000 feet below our feet. The MP sergeant radios his commander. Within hours, engineers descend into absolute darkness, past flooded shafts and collapsed tunnels, until their flashlights catch something impossible. A steel vault door, 20 feet high, sealed with a massive lock. Behind it, silence. And a smell. Stale air that hasn't moved in weeks. What waits inside will become the largest treasure recovery in military history. Was this discovery a final act of justice, or the first move in a new kind of war? Not every battlefield held soldiers. Some held secrets that couldn't shoot back. Merkers, April 4th, 1945. A mining village in Thuringia, 20 kilometers from the shifting front line. The war is collapsing inward now. American tanks rolling east, Soviet armor grinding west, the Reich shrinking like a fist closing on its own throat. Two women walk the dirt road toward the American checkpoint. They are French, displaced workers, brought to Germany years ago when the word volunteer still pretended to mean something other than forced. Their names are not recorded in the official reports. History will remember what they said, not who they were. They flag down a jeep, military police, 90th Infantry Division. The sergeant doesn't speak French. One of the women tries German, broken but clear enough. Trucks, at night, from Berlin. Heavy crates, sehr schwer, very heavy. Too heavy for 3 men. Soldiers with guns. They went down, she points. The Kaiserroda mine entrance, 300 meters behind the village. A salt mine, operational for decades, now requisitioned by the state. The sergeant radios it in. Another tip. There have been dozens. Hidden weapons, party officials in basements, stolen bicycles. Most lead nowhere. But Lieutenant Colonel William A. Russell, Twines, Corps Intelligence, decides this one is worth checking. Not because he believes it, because in a dying dictatorship, the lies get stranger than the truth, and sometimes you have to look just to prove there's nothing to see. Merkers itself knows. The villagers know. In February, they watched the trains arrive. In March, they saw the convoys, trucks with tarps lashed tight, soldiers who didn't speak to locals, unloading that continued past midnight. The mine operated in shifts, always had, but these shifts were different. No ore coming up. Only men, silent, exhausted, returning to the surface at dawn. No one asked. In April 1945, in a village 20 kilometers from American armor and 30 from Soviet guns, you survived by not asking. The MP sergeant writes it down. Possible supply depot, Kaiserroda mine. French civilians report unusual activity. He does not write. They looked afraid. But they did. 2,000 feet down, gravity worked differently, and so did the rules of war. April 6th. Merkers falls to the Third Army without resistance. Most of the Wehrmacht has already retreated east or dissolved into the countryside. Engineers from the 357th Infantry Regiment are sent to survey the mine. Standard procedure. Check for booby traps, ammunition dumps, hidden command posts. The Kaiserroda mine is not like the coal pits of the Ruhr. It is a salt mine, older, deeper, colder. Its primary shaft descends 700 meters, 2,100 feet, straight down. The elevator is a cage, open-walled, powered by electrical winch. It groans under the weight of 6 men and their equipment. Sergeant Bill Thompson leads the team. He has seen mines before, Pennsylvania anthracite, Nevada silver, but nothing this deep. The cage drops in darkness. The air changes, metallic, mineral, dry. Salt mines are famous for their dryness, humidity near zero, temperature constant, 47 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, summer or winter. Ideal for preserving anything that fears rot. The descent takes 4 minutes. 4 minutes of creaking cable and the hum of the winch motor 2,000 feet above. At the bottom, the tunnel opens into a gallery, wide enough for trucks. Rail tracks run along the floor, used to haul salt to the elevator shaft. Thompson's flashlight beam cuts through the blackness. The walls glisten, white, crystalline, ancient salt deposits compressed over millennia. Beautiful, in a hostile way. The tunnel splits. Left leads deeper into the mine complex. Right leads to a chamber that shouldn't exist. They follow right. The passage narrows, then opens again. And there it is. A steel vault door, 20 feet high, 12 feet wide. Set into a reinforced concrete frame, itself set into the salt wall. A massive wheel lock, industrial grade, probably weighing 2 tons on its own. Untouched. Sealed. Thompson radios up. We found something, not sure what. But it's big. By that evening, word reaches 13th Corps headquarters. By the next morning, engineers are preparing to cut the lock. Behind 20 tons of steel, something waited that Hitler himself had ordered hidden. April 7th, morning. The engineers study the vault door. Standard military demolitions won't work. Too much risk of collapse, cave-in, or destroying whatever is inside. They need precision, cutting torches. But first, they need to know what's behind it. That's when Werner Veick is brought in. Veick is 52 years old, a career civil servant of the Reichsbank, the German central bank. He has worked in currency management for 20 years. Neat suit, rimless glasses, the polite deference of a man used to following instructions. He was found in Merker's village, not hiding, just waiting for someone to ask. The interrogation is brief. What is behind the door? Veick's answer is careful, precise. He has spent his career counting money. He knows the value of accuracy. Gold baron. Devisen. Banknoten. Gemälde. Gold bars. Foreign currency. Banknotes. Paintings. How much? Alles. Everything. It takes the translator a moment to confirm he heard correctly. Veick repeats, everything. The entire gold reserve of the Reichsbank. Berlin was bombed on February 3rd. Direct hit on the Reichsbank building. Walter Funk, Reich Minister of Economics and Reichsbank President, ordered the reserves moved, not to a branch office, to a place no bombers could reach, underground, hidden, safe. Veick provides the inventory numbers from memory. Over 8,000 gold bars, hundreds of crates, billions of Reichsmarks. Foreign currency from occupied territories, French francs, Polish zloty, Belgian francs, Dutch guilders, and art. Museum collections evacuated from Berlin. The American officers exchange looks. If Veick is correct, they are standing in front of the largest financial repository in German history. But Veick adds one more detail, quieter, as if saying it too loudly would make it more real. Es gibt auch SS-Lieferungen. There are also SS deliveries. What kind of deliveries? Veick does not answer immediately. Then, personal items. From the east. The interrogating officer lets it sit. He will understand later. April 8th, 0600 hours. Engineers begin cutting the vault lock. It takes 6 hours. The wheel lock is breached with acetylene torches, then crowbars, then a winch attached to a truck on the surface. The door swings open, slowly. Its hinges scream, and the flashlights go in. When the dust cleared, the flashlights revealed not just gold, but the entire economic skeleton of a dead empire. Inside, silence. No guards, no booby traps, just rows. 8,198 gold bars. each stamped with the Reichsbank eagle and swastika, stacked in neat columns, 4 feet high, stretching 40 feet back into the chamber. Each bar weighs approximately 12.5 kilograms, 27.5 pounds. The gold is dull under the flashlight beams, not the bright yellow of jewelry, but the deep ochre of industrial bullion. 55 wooden crates, unopened, marked Reichsbank Berlin. Treasure. Each contains additional gold, coins, smaller ingots, reserves from regional banks. 3,682 canvas bags, U.S. Army duffel size, filled with foreign currency. French francs, bundled in stacks of 10,000. Belgian francs in bricks wrapped with Reichsbank bands. Polish zloty, Dutch guilders, Norwegian kroner, Greek drachmas, occupation currency, looted national treasuries, the liquidity of conquest. Hundreds of sacks of Reichsmarks, German paper money, now functionally worthless, but printed in denominations up to 1,000 marks. Inflation had already gutted its value, but the Reich kept printing, kept storing, kept pretending. And in the corner, separate from the bullion, 8 large suitcases, leather, not military issue. Sergeant Thompson opens one. Inside, rings. Hundreds of them. Wedding bands, signet rings, some with stones still set, tarnished silver, a few in gold. He opens another suitcase, eyeglass frames, dozens, twisted, bent. Another, dental gold. Small pieces, irregular, some still attached to fragments of tooth enamel. The room goes quiet. The men understand, even if they don't yet have the words. This is not a bank vault. This is a grave that never got dug. Later that day, Captain Robert Posey of the Monuments, Fine Arts and Archives section arrives with PFC Lincoln Kirstein. They are sent to catalog the art. In adjacent chambers, tunnels branching off from the main vault, they find paintings wrapped in oilcloth and burlap. Works from the Kaiser Friedrich Museum, the Berlin State Museums. Portraits, landscapes, old masters. Removed not for plunder, but for preservation. The Reich, in its final convulsions, tried to save its culture even as it incinerated the culture of others. The total value of the Merkers' cash is initially estimated at $238 million in 1945 currency, roughly $4 billion in 2026 dollars, accounting for gold price changes and inflation. But some things can't be appraised. The SS suitcases carry no monetary value in any ledger. Their worth is measured in absences, names, families, futures. 3 men descended together into the mine, Eisenhower, Bradley, Patton, but they didn't see the same thing. April 12, 1945. 4 days after the vault opens. Word has traveled up the chain of command. Scene Corps to 3rd Army to 12th Army Group to Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force. Eisenhower himself requests to see it. He brings Bradley and Patton. The 3 generals arrive mid-morning in a convoy of jeeps and staff cars. Eisenhower is methodical, controlled, every movement calculated for the cameras that will inevitably follow. Bradley is quieter, thoughtful, already thinking through logistics. Patton is Patton. Ivory-handled revolvers, gleaming boots, a man who treats war like theater and theater like war. They descend in the mine elevator. Eisenhower does not like enclosed spaces, but he doesn't show it. The cage drops, cables singing, 2,000 feet into the earth. At the bottom, the vault is lit now with portable floodlights powered by a generator on the surface. The gold glows under the harsh light, not beautiful, but undeniable. Patton walks the rows, counting under his breath, then stops and turns to Bradley. "You know what we ought to do? Cut this into medallions, one for every son of a bitch in 3rd Army." Bradley smiles. Eisenhower does not. It's a joke. Patton's jokes always have edges, but it's also a test. What are we supposed to do with this? They inspect the suitcases. Eisenhower picks up a wedding ring, turns it over. No inscription. He sets it down carefully, as if it might break. How much of this is from the camps? An aide, a captain with a clipboard, answers. We don't know yet, sir. The Reichsbank kept separate records. We're trying to cross-reference. Eisenhower nods. Priority. I want to know where every ounce came from. The tour lasts 90 minutes. By noon, they are back on the surface, blinking in the daylight. Patton lights a cigarette. Bradley takes notes. Eisenhower looks back at the mine entrance. Just a concrete structure, a winch house, an iron door, nothing to indicate what it holds. That night, back at headquarters, the news comes through. President Franklin D. Roosevelt has died. Suddenly, a cerebral hemorrhage at Warm Springs, Georgia. The war in Europe is days or weeks from ending, and the American president who guided the nation through it will not see the conclusion. Eisenhower does not sleep that night. Later in his memoirs, he will mention the Merkers' visit in a single paragraph. He will not mention the suitcases. Gold could be counted, but how do you inventory a civilization's stolen soul? April 9th. Captain Robert Posey and PFC Lincoln Kirstein begin their work in the tunnels adjacent to the main vault. They are monuments men, officially, officers of the Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives program, created in 1943 to protect and recover cultural property in war zones. Posey is an architect from Alabama. Kirstein is a Harvard-educated writer and impresario who will, after the war, co-found the New York City Ballet. Neither expected to spend the spring of 1945 2,000 feet underground in a salt mine. The art is stored in a separate chamber, 60 meters east of the gold vault. The tunnel connecting them is narrow, wide enough for a single minecart. The air still carries that mineral taste, that dryness that pulls moisture from your throat with every breath. Inside the chamber, 1,214 paintings and drawings wrapped in burlap, stacked in wooden crates, leaning against salt walls. Posey opens the first crate carefully. Oil on canvas. A portrait. Flemish, probably 16th century. The surface is pristine. No mold, no cracking. The salt mine has done its job. Kirstein catalogs as Posey unwraps. They find works from the Kaiser Friedrich Museum, the Berlin State Museums, the Prussian State Library. Not looted art, not in the usual sense. These are German national collections, evacuated from Berlin to prevent their destruction by Allied bombs. It's a strange inversion. The Reich that burned books and confiscated degenerate art also tried in its final weeks to save Rembrandts and Dürers. But there are anomalies. Crates marked with French museum tags. Paintings that don't match Berlin inventories. Kirstein makes notes. Some of this was stolen, taken from occupied territories under the pretense of protective custody, the same phrase used to describe what happened to people. In one corner, Posey finds something else. Busts and sculptures, wrapped in cloth, marble, bronze, some dating to antiquity. A small bronze Eros, Hellenistic period, probably looted from a Greek museum. A medieval reliquary from a French cathedral. Cultural objects orphaned by war, waiting in the dark. Posey and Kirstein will spend weeks cataloging. They work by floodlight, taking photographs, cross-referencing manifests. Later, they will file reports with the Allied command, initiating the long, imperfect process of restitution. Some pieces will be returned, others will vanish into private collections, bureaucratic limbo, Cold War bargaining. But that is later. On April 9th, Posey simply wraps the portrait back in burlap, sets it carefully against the wall, and moves to the next crate, one at a time. The only way to inventory a stolen world. Every bar of gold told a story. Most of them began with a railway car headed east. To understand Merkers, you trace the route in reverse. not from discovery to origin, but from the mine shaft back to the decision that put it there. February 3, 1945, Berlin. The Reichsbank headquarters on Jägerstrasse, near the old city center, is struck during an American daylight bombing raid. The building does not collapse, but fires gut the upper floors. Walter Funk, Reich Minister of Economics and President of the Reichsbank, orders an immediate evacuation of all reserves. Where can you hide a nation's gold when your nation is disappearing? The evacuation begins February 6, 1945, and continues through March 15, 1945, a total of 38 days. During that period, the Reichsbank organizes 12 separate convoys from Berlin to Merkers, each traveling approximately 310 kilometers, 193 miles, through increasingly contested territory. The first convoy departs February 11th with 728 gold bars and 82 bags of foreign currency. The second, on February 18th, carries 204 bars and crates of documents. By March 1st, the pace accelerates. Convoys now move every 3 to 4 days. The largest single shipment occurs March 8 to 9, 1,350 gold bars, 640 currency bags, and 18 crates of art, transported in 9 trucks under guard by 47 Wehrmacht soldiers and 12 SS personnel. Each convoy travels at night to avoid Allied air patrols. The route, Berlin to Erfurt, 190 kilometers, then south to Merkers, 120 kilometers, using secondary roads through the Thuringian forest. Total cargo moved, approximately 100 metric tons of gold, 3,782 bags of currency, 1,200 plus pieces of art, and an estimated 8 to 12 tons of SS deliveries, exact weight unrecorded. The final convoy arrives Merkers on March 15, 1945, just 3 weeks before the Third Army crosses the Rhine. The mine is sealed March 18th. By April 6th, when Americans arrive, it has been locked, dark, and silent for 19 days. Why Merkers? 3 reasons, all practical. First, depth. The Kaiserode mine is one of the deepest operational salt mines in Germany. At 700 meters below the surface, it is immune to bombing. Even a direct hit with the largest Allied munitions, the British Grand Slam bomb, 22,000 pounds, would not penetrate that far. Second, climate. Salt mines self-regulate, humidity near zero, temperature constant. No rust, no rot, no degradation. Gold bars can sit for decades undisturbed. Art can wait out a war. Third, secrecy. Merkers is small, isolated, away from major cities and rail hubs. The local population depends on the mine for work. They will not ask questions. The mine administration is loyal, or at least compliant. Werner Veick, the Reichsbank cashier sent to oversee the vault, reports directly to Berlin and no one else. The convoys arrive in darkness. Trucks unload in the mine yard, crates transferred to elevator cages, lowered in stages. At the bottom, forced laborers, prisoners likely, though records do not specify, haul the cargo through the tunnels to the vault chamber. The work is exhausting. A single gold bar weighs 27.5 pounds, 8,000 bars. Do the math. By mid-March, Berlin is frantic. The Red Army is 60 kilometers from the city's eastern edge. American forces have crossed the Rhine in the west. The Reich that was supposed to last 1,000 years has 8 weeks remaining. But the gold is safe. 2,000 feet down, locked behind steel, guarded by silence and stone, as if burial could substitute for survival. Some gold arrived in bars, other gold arrived in suitcases, still warm. The Reichsbank vault at Merkers contains 2 kinds of wealth. The first is institutional, national reserves, foreign currency, the financial apparatus of a state. The second is personal, wedding rings, eyeglasses, teeth. The Americans will later designate these as the Melma deposits, named after Bruno Melma, an SS officer who served as the intermediary between the concentration camp administration and the Reichsbank. Beginning in August 1942, Melma supervised regular deliveries of valuables seized from prisoners at Auschwitz, Treblinka, Sobibor, and other camps. The process was industrial. Upon arrival at a camp, prisoners were separated. Those selected for labor were registered. Those selected for immediate death, the elderly, children, the sick, were sent to the gas chambers. Afterward, their possessions were sorted. Clothing went to textile recycling, shoes to the Wehrmacht. Valuables, gold, currency, jewelry, went to the SS Economic Office, then to the Reichsbank. The Reichsbank did not ask questions, or rather, it asked the wrong ones. Not where did this come from, but what is the purity? What is the weight? The gold teeth were particularly valuable. Dental gold is an alloy, usually 16 karat, sometimes higher, easily melted and recast. The Degasser Corporation, a metals refining company with long-standing contracts with the Reichsbank, operated smelting facilities in Frankfurt. Between 1942 and 1945, Degasser processed an estimated 50 to 70 tons of gold from SS deliveries. Some of it was recast into bars and stamped with the Reichsbank eagle. Some was sold on international markets through Swiss banks. The 8 suitcases found at Merkers represent only a fragment, items that had not yet been processed when the war collapsed. Most of the Melma deposits had already been melted, refined, mixed with legitimate bullion, rendered anonymous. You cannot trace a gold bar back to a person once it has passed through a furnace. But the suitcases remain, physical, specific. Each ring implies a hand. Each pair of eyeglasses implies a face. The weight is unbearable, not because gold is heavy, but because it isn't. Werner Veick, during his interrogation, confirms the SS deliveries. He provides dates, quantities, storage protocols. He does not provide names. He does not have them. The Reichsbank recorded weight and purity, not identity. From the bank's perspective, gold was gold. Provenance was irrelevant. Later, Allied prosecutors will call this willful ignorance. The legal term is Verdrängung, repression, denial. To work in an institution that processed the material residue of genocide and claim you didn't know, or worse, to know and consider it merely an accounting problem. Veick will not be charged with war crimes. He is a clerk, not a camp guard. He followed orders, maintained ledgers, kept the vault secure. But history does not require a trial to render judgment. In the Merkers vault, under the floodlights, the suitcases sit open. An American private, barely 20 years old, stares at a pile of wedding rings. He does not touch them. No one does. Some objects are evidence. Some are graves. They cross the Rhine at lightning speed, but no one planned for them to become bankers. To understand how the Third Army found Merkers, you have to understand how fast Patton moved and why the Germans couldn't stop him. March 22nd, 1945. The Third Army crosses the Rhine River near Oppenheim, south of Mainz. It is the first major American crossing not met with sustained German resistance. Within 24 hours, Patton has 4 divisions on the eastern bank. Within a week, his armor is driving into the heart of Germany, not toward Berlin, but southeast, into Bavaria and Thuringia. Why that direction? Strategy and circumstance. Eisenhower's plan prioritizes encirclement, not symbolic conquest. The goal is to cut off German forces in the Ruhr industrial region to the north, then sweep east and south to prevent a rumored Alpine redoubt, a supposed Nazi fallback position in the mountains of southern Germany. The redoubt turns out to be largely mythical, but in March 1945, intelligence takes it seriously. Patton's Third Army advances at a pace that surprises even his own staff. Between March 22 and April 6, just 15 days, the Third Army covers over 200 kilometers, captures 68 towns, and takes approximately 35,000 prisoners. This is not blitzkrieg in the German sense. Patton doesn't have the fuel reserves or concentrated armor for sustained lightning war. What he has is momentum. The Wehrmacht is collapsing. Units surrender en masse. Officers abandon commands. Roads clog with refugees, deserters, and displaced workers moving in every direction at once. On April 4th, lead elements of the 90th Infantry Division reach Merkers. There is no battle. A few scattered rifle shots from retreating soldiers. By evening, the town is secure. The mine is captured intact. No demolition charges, no sabotage. Either the Wehrmacht didn't have time, or they didn't see the point. The two French women approach the MPs on April 4th. By April 6th, the investigation is underway. By April 8th, the vault is open. The entire sequence, from rumor to discovery, takes 4 days. In a slower war, it wouldn't have happened. The Germans would have evacuated the mine, or destroyed it, or held the area longer. But in April 1945, the Reich is moving too fast toward its own end to cover its tracks. Patton loves the discovery. Not for the gold itself, he's not venal, just vain, but for what it represents. His Third Army, always in competition with Montgomery's British forces to the north and Bradley's other American armies, has found the biggest prize of the war. When Eisenhower and Bradley visit on April 12th, Patton plays host, proud as a hunter showing off a trophy. But the discovery also creates problems. The Third Army is a combat force, not a custodial service. Soldiers are trained to fight, not to guard vaults. Patton needs his men moving east, not standing sentry over gold bars. Within days, 10th Corps assigns a full battalion, the 357th Infantry, to secure the mine perimeter. MPs are posted at the elevator. Engineers inspect the tunnels for structural integrity. The Third Army has become, against its nature, a bank. The war will be over in 28 days. In that time, the gold will have to be moved, catalogued, secured, and handed over to higher command. Patton will be gone by then, chasing the remnants of the Wehrmacht deeper into Bavaria. But Merkers will remain his story, the treasure that fell into his lap because he moved faster than the enemy could retreat. Speed has rewards. Sometimes the reward is victory. Sometimes it's a vault full of ghosts. He was a bookkeeper who kept the most terrible books in history. April 10th, 1945. Werner Veick is interrogated for the 3rd time. The first 2 were brief, logistical, focused on vault layout and inventory. This one goes deeper. The interrogation room is a commandeered office in Merkers, above ground. A wooden table, 2 chairs, a single electric lamp. Captain Arthur Kahn, Twoithiend. Corps Intelligence conducts the interview. A translator is present. Veick speaks some English, but technical terms require precision. Kahn is methodical. He does not raise his voice. He does not threaten. He simply asks Veick to explain. How long have you worked for the Reichsbank? 22 years, since 1923. Veick started as a junior clerk in the currency department, working his way up through incremental promotions, the kind of career built on reliability, not ambition. Were you a member of the Nazi Party? No. Veick says this carefully, as if he's been preparing the answer. He was pressured to join in 1937, he explains, but his direct supervisor shielded him. Civil servants were not required to be party members, only to be politically reliable. What does politically reliable mean? It means you follow orders. You do not ask questions. You do not involve yourself in policy. You process paperwork, maintain ledgers, ensure the numbers balance. Kahn lets that sit for a moment. Then, the suitcases, the SS deliveries. When did those start arriving at the Reichsbank? Veick's face tightens. Late 1942, he says. Maybe August. He was not involved in the initial arrangements. That was handled by a higher management, direct communication with SS Obergruppenführer Oswald Pohl, head of the SS Economic Office. But Veick saw the deliveries. Suitcases, crates, canvas bags. Always delivered by SS personnel. Always logged as special deposits, Melmer account, Did you know where they came from? A pause. Then, we were told they were seized assets from enemies of the state. Did you believe that? Another pause. Longer. At first. And later. Veick does not answer immediately. He looks at his hands. Clean hands, unmarked. The hands of a man who has never held a weapon or turned a spade. Finally. Later it became difficult to not understand. Khan presses. Difficult to not understand what? Veick chooses his words carefully. The volume, the nature of the items, gold teeth, children's jewelry. It was not the property of criminals or resistance fighters. It was... He stops. Then, quieter. It was the property of people who no longer needed it. Khan writes this down, verbatim. It will appear in the official WWII Corps Intelligence Report, filed April 15, 1945. The phrase, people who no longer needed it, will be underlined by someone at chief headquarters. Did you report your concerns? To whom? Veick's response is not defiant, just factual. I was a cashier. My superiors were following directives from the Minister of Economics. Those directives came from higher authority. You do not question higher authority. Why not? Veick looks directly at Khan for the first time. Because in Germany, Captain, you survive by not questioning. The interrogation continues for 2 more hours. Veick provides dates, names, quantities. He describes the internal Reichsbank protocols for processing the SS deposits, kept separate from regular bullion reserves, logged in a special ledger, stored in a designated section of the vault. He confirms that the suitcases found at Merker's were part of a larger flow that had been ongoing for nearly 3 years. At the end, Khan asks one final question. Do you regret your role in this? Veick does not answer immediately. When he does, his voice is flat, drained. I regret that I was competent. If I had been less good at my work, perhaps I would have been dismissed. Someone else would have kept the ledgers, but it would not have been me. Khan closes his notebook. Veick is escorted back to a holding cell. Not a prisoner exactly, but not free. He will remain in American custody for another 6 weeks, providing testimony, cross-referencing documents, helping auditors reconstruct the Reichsbank's operations during the war. He will never be charged with a crime. After the war, he will return to Germany, settle in a small town in Bavaria, live quietly. He will not speak publicly about Merker's. When asked, he will say only that he did his job. Some men commit atrocities. Others simply count them. Moving 100 tons of gold requires more than trucks. It requires a system that's already dying. To move the Reichsbank reserves from Berlin to Merker's was, in logistical terms, a small miracle. Not because it was well planned, but because it happened at all in the chaos of Germany's collapse. February 1945. Berlin is being bombed daily. The rail network is fractured, tracks torn up by air raids, stations reduced to rubble, rolling stock commandeered by the Wehrmacht for troop movements or destroyed in the fighting. Roads are clogged with refugees fleeing east to west, soldiers retreating west to east, and columns of displaced workers, prisoners, and civilians moving in every direction, trying to survive. Into this chaos, the Reichsbank inserts 12 convoys, carrying the financial reserves of the Third Reich. The route is 310 kilometers, Berlin to Erfurt, then south through the Thuringian forest to Merker's. On a good road in peacetime, it's a 6-hour drive. In February 1945, each convoy takes 2 nights, traveling only in darkness to avoid Allied fighter bombers, which by this point in the war own the daylight skies. The trucks are requisitioned from Wehrmacht motor pools. Opel Blitz, 3-tonners, the workhorses of the German army, now repurposed as treasure transports. Each convoy uses between 6 and 12 trucks depending on the cargo weight. The drivers are soldiers, most of them too old or too young for frontline service, assigned to logistics duty. The guards are a mix: Wehrmacht infantry, some SS personnel, and in later convoys, Volkssturm, the civilian militia called up in the Reich's final desperation. The trucks are not armored. There is no air cover. The Luftwaffe is essentially destroyed by early 1945, its remaining planes hoarded for defense of German cities. The convoys rely on speed, darkness, and luck. If an Allied patrol intercepts them, they are lost. If partisans ambush them, there are scattered resistance groups in the occupied territories, they are lost. If the trucks break down, they are abandoned. There is no time for repairs, and yet none of the convoys are attacked. Not one. Why? Partly luck. Partly because the Allies don't know the convoys exist. Intelligence in early 1945 is focused on troop movements, not bank transfers. And partly because Germany is so thoroughly collapsing that even its enemies are caught off guard by how fast the end is coming. At Merkers, the trucks unload in the mine yard. The crates and bags are transferred to elevator cages, lowered 700 meters in multiple trips. The elevator capacity is limited, each descent carefully calculated to avoid overloading the cables. At the bottom, forced laborers move the cargo through the tunnels to the vault. Who were these laborers? The records do not say. Likely prisoners from nearby work camps, Ohrdruf, Langenstein, subcamps of Buchenwald, men already starving, already dying, now made to haul gold bars in darkness. Some of them will not survive the war. Some of them will be liberated by American forces in April, walking skeletons, barely able to stand. None of them will be compensated for their labor. None of them will be named in the official accounts. The logistics of greed rely on the logistics of slavery. This is not incidental. It is structural. By March 15th, the final convoy arrives. The mine is sealed. The gold is safe. The system that moved it, the trucks, the soldiers, the laborers, dissolves back into the chaos of a dying state. 3 weeks later, the Third Army captures Merkers. The treasure is found. But the cost of moving it, the human cost, is already buried. He commanded the greatest army in history, but no one taught him how to divide up the spoils of Armageddon. April 13th, 1945. The day after Eisenhower's visit to Merkers. The day after Roosevelt's death. Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, CHEF, convenes an urgent meeting in Reims, France. The subject: what to do with the Merkers treasure. The problem is both simple and impossible. The gold, the currency, the art, it all has to go somewhere. But where? And to whom? Eisenhower's staff presents the options. Option 1, leave it in place. The mine is secure, the vault intact. Post a permanent guard, wait until the war ends, then let the diplomats sort it out. But this is impractical. Merkers is in Thuringia, which under the Yalta agreements will fall into the Soviet occupation zone once Germany is partitioned. If the treasure stays, it will end up in Soviet hands. The British and Americans do not trust Stalin to share. Option 2. Move it to the American occupation zone. Secure it in a fortress city, Frankfurt, maybe, or Munich. But this creates a different problem: possession. If the Americans hold the treasure, do they control it? Who decides what gets returned, and to whom? Churchill is already sending telegrams demanding that Britain receive a share. After all, British forces fought in the war too. The French want compensation for occupation losses. The Soviets will want their cut. And then there are the smaller nations, Belgium, Netherlands, Poland, whose currencies and gold reserves were looted by the Reich. Option 3. Immediate restitution. Identify the owners, return the property. But how? The Reichsbank ledgers are incomplete. The SS records are non-existent. Himmler's bureaucracy burned most of its files before retreating. The suitcases of personal effects, the rings, the eyeglasses, have no names attached. You cannot return a wedding ring when you don't know whose wedding it came from. And even if you did, the owner is likely dead. Eisenhower listens. He does not enjoy this kind of decision. He is a military commander, trained in strategy, logistics, the application of force. This is politics. Worse, it's justice, or the attempt at justice, which is messier than politics and less forgiving than war. He makes a provisional decision. Move the treasure to Frankfurt immediately. Secure it in the Reichsbank building there, which is under American control. Catalog everything. Begin the process of identifying owners and claimants. Form a commission, allied representatives from all the major powers, to oversee restitution. It is a compromise, which means no one will be happy. But it buys time, and in April 1945, time is the only currency more valuable than gold. The order goes out. Prepare a convoy. Maximum security. Move the treasure as soon as possible. But Eisenhower is not naive. He knows that moving 100 tons of gold through occupied Germany in the closing weeks of a war is an invitation for theft, accident, or worse. He assigns his best officers to oversee it. He orders audits. Every bar, every bag, counted and recorded before it leaves Merkers, then counted and recorded again when it arrives in Frankfurt. Any discrepancy, any missing item, will be treated as a criminal matter. He also knows this. Whatever happens, history will judge not just the discovery, but what comes after. Victory is easy to declare. Justice is harder to deliver. That night, Eisenhower writes in his diary, entries he will later revise for his memoirs. One line remains: "We have found the gold. Now we must decide if we deserve to keep it." 32 trucks, armed guards every 50 meters. Moving the treasure was almost as dangerous as finding it. April 16th, 1945. Dawn. The convoy assembles in the village of Merkers, just outside the mine entrance. The operation has been planned down to the minute. The convoy consists of 32 trucks, 28 Opel Blitz, 3-ton cargo trucks, requisitioned from captured German motor pools, and 4 American GMC 2.5-ton deuce-and-a-half trucks, borrowed from 13th Corps Supply. Total cargo capacity, approximately 94 tons. Security detail, 142 soldiers from the 357th Infantry Battalion, plus 16 military police, plus 8 officers including Captain Arthur Kahn, intelligence liaison, and 2 monuments officers, Posey and Kirstein, overseeing art transport. Weapons inventory, 142 M1, Garand rifles, 16 Thompson submachine guns, 8 M1 1911 pistols, 4 Browning 30 caliber machine guns, 2 mounted on lead vehicles, 2 on rear guard. Total personnel, 174 men. The route: Merkers to Eisenach, 32 kilometers. Eisenach to Fulda, 89 kilometers. Fulda to Frankfurt am Main, 104 kilometers. Total distance 225 kilometers, 140 miles. Estimated travel time, 8 hours at an average speed of 28 kilometers per hour, 17 miles per hour, accounting for road conditions, checkpoints, and rest stops. Fuel allocation, 140 liters of gasoline, pre-positioned at Fulda for refueling. The convoy departs 0600 hours, April 16th, and arrives Frankfurt 1620 hours, April 16th, 10 hours and 20 minutes actual travel time, including a 2-hour delay at Fulda due to a blown tire on truck 914. Total cargo transported: 8,198 gold bars, 102.3 tons, 3,682 currency bags, estimated 6.4 tons, 55 crates bullion, 8.2 tons, 1,214 pieces of art, estimated 2.1 tons, Reichsbank documents, 0.8 tons, grand total, 119.8 tons. The 8 SS suitcases travel in truck number 1 under personal guard of Captain Kahn. The convoy moves in 3 sections. The lead section, 10 trucks, 1 machine gun vehicle, departs first, establishing the route and clearing checkpoints. The middle section, the bulk of the cargo, 20 trucks, follows 15 minutes later. The rear guard, 2 trucks, security detail, and a second machine gun vehicle trails behind, watching for ambush or pursuit. The roads are cratered. American and British bombers have spent months destroying German infrastructure, rail lines, bridges, highways. The convoy has to detour repeatedly, following secondary roads through villages and farmland. In some places, the trucks have to slow to walking speed, navigating debris, abandoned vehicles, craters. They pass through Eisenhower, a medieval town now half destroyed. The residents watch the convoy in silence. 32 trucks, heavily armed soldiers, moving west. They do not know what the trucks carry. Some assume it's ammunition. Others think it's supplies for the advancing Allied armies. No one guesses gold. At Fulda, the convoy stops for refueling. This is the most vulnerable moment. Trucks stationary, engines off, men dispersed. Captain Khan posts sentries in a perimeter, one every 20 meters. The refueling takes an hour. Then truck number 14, carrying currency bags, suffers a blown tire. The convoy cannot leave a truck behind, too risky. Engineers replace the tire in the field, working fast, while the rest of the convoy idles. 2 hours lost. They reach Frankfurt at 16:20 hours, late afternoon. The Reichsbank building is still standing, one of the few large structures in the city center, not gutted by bombing. It is now Allied headquarters for financial operations in occupied Germany. The trucks pull into a secured courtyard. Guards surround the perimeter. The unloading begins. Each gold bar is checked against the Merker's inventory manifest. Sergeant Bill Thompson, who first descended into the mine, is here too, overseeing. Every bar numbered, every bag counted. The process takes until midnight. When it's done, the count matches. Not a single bar missing, not a single bag unaccounted for, or so the official report states. Later audits will find discrepancies. Small ones, a few bags of currency short, a handful of gold coins unaccounted for. Whether this is theft, accounting error, or deliberate concealment, no one will definitively prove. The war is ending, paperwork gets lost, people get tired, and 100 tons of gold is hard to count perfectly, even once, let alone twice. But on April 16, 1945, the convoy arrives intact. The treasure is secured. Eisenhower is informed. The success is noted in the official log. Transfer complete. No casualties. No loss of material. What is not noted? The fear. Every man on that convoy understood they were moving a target. If word had leaked, if German resistance fighters had known, if desperate SS units had intercepted, if even Allied soldiers with fewer scruples had decided to take a share, the convoy would have been hit. 100 tons of gold is worth dying for. It is also worth killing for. They were lucky. Or perhaps the war was simply too tired, too close to its end, for one more act of violence. Merker's wasn't alone. Across Germany, mountains kept secrets in their bellies. Merker's captured headlines. But it was not the only Nazi treasure cache discovered in the closing weeks of the war. Bernterode Mine, 90 kilometers northeast of Merker's, discovered by American forces on April 29, 1945. Inside, coffins. Not treasure in the conventional sense, but relics of Prussian history. The remains of Frederick the Great, his father Friedrich Wilhelm I, and Paul von Hindenburg, the Weimar president who appointed Hitler chancellor. The Nazis had moved the coffins from Potsdam to protect them from Soviet desecration. They are symbols, not currency. But the Nazis understood. Sometimes power is ritual, not gold. Ransbach Mine, Rhineland, discovered May 3, 1945 by British forces. Contents: art collections from Cologne, Bonn, and Düsseldorf museums. Over 900 paintings, sculptures, medieval manuscripts. Also found 14 crates of gold dental work, unprocessed, recently delivered. Origin unknown. Likely another SS Melmer site that hadn't been fully catalogued before the collapse. Altusee Salt Mine, Austria, discovered by American Monuments officers May 8, 1945, the day Germany surrenders. The largest art cache of the war. Over 6,500 paintings, including works looted from French, Polish, and Austrian collections. Vermeer, Rembrandt, Michelangelo, Hitler's personal collection, intended for the planned Führermuseum in Linz. The mine was rigged with explosives. Hitler had ordered that if the war was lost, the art should be destroyed. Local Austrian resistance fighters defused the charges days before the Allies arrived. 6,000 works saved by 5 men with wire cutters. Heilbronn Mine, southern Germany. American forces, April 1945. Contents unclear. Official reports list documents and currency, but local accounts describe gold bars and jewelry. The mine was partially flooded when discovered, some chambers inaccessible. The site was sealed, then transferred to German authorities in 1952. What, if anything, remains inside is still debated. And others. Dozens of smaller discoveries. Castle basements filled with looted furniture. Bank vaults in provincial towns holding local hoards. A barn in Bavaria with 400 paintings. A warehouse in Hamburg with crates of silver tableware, each piece engraved with the names of Jewish families. The pattern is consistent. In its final months, the Reich buried itself. Not just its gold, but its plunder. As if putting things underground could preserve them, or hide them, or somehow outlast the military defeat. Some caches were found. Others were deliberately concealed so well they remain lost. After the war, treasure hunters will search for years, following rumors, decoding fragmentary SS records, excavating hillsides and tunnels across Germany and Austria. Most will find nothing. A few will find bones. But in April and May 1945, the discoveries come fast. Allied intelligence tries to track them, catalogue them, coordinate restitution efforts. It is overwhelming. There are not enough monuments officers, not enough translators, not enough time. Merkers remains the largest single find. 100 tons in one vault. But the total Nazi plunder, scattered across mines, castles, warehouses, and graves, is incalculable. The word used in the official reports is dispersed. The word that should have been used is hidden. To hide something is to hope it will wait. The Reich hoped the war would pause, reverse, somehow allow retrieval. It didn't. The mountains kept the secrets. And when the vaults were opened, the secrets came out not as treasure, but as evidence, not of wealth, of theft. And underneath theft, murder. You can return a painting to a museum, but how do you return a wedding ring when the bride is ash? Frankfurt, May 1945. Germany has surrendered. The war in Europe is over. The Reichsbank building, now Allied headquarters for financial restitution, becomes a different kind of battlefield, one fought with ledgers, testimonies, and the impossible mathematics of justice. The restitution problem is this: identify, verify, return. 3 steps that sound simple and prove nearly insurmountable. Identifying owners. The Reichsbank records are detailed for institutional gold. Bars stamped with national bank insignias, currency bundled with ministry labels. French francs can be traced to the Banque de France. Belgian gold bears the seal of the National Bank of Belgium. Dutch, Polish, Norwegian reserves each has documentation, serial numbers, mint marks. These can be returned, at least in theory. But the SS suitcases? No records. Bruno Melmer's deliveries were logged by weight and purity, not by name. The Reichsbank treated concentration camp plunder as anonymous bullion. 800 wedding rings. Whose? From which camp? Auschwitz, Treblinka, Sobibor. The administrative apparatus that murdered with such precision kept no receipts for the dead. Verifying claims. By summer 1945, dozens of governments file claims for portions of the Merkers' treasure. France demands 2,000 gold bars. Belgium wants its reserves back, plus reparations. The Netherlands files for currency restitution. Poland, Its government, now Soviet-controlled, claims everything looted from Warsaw. The Soviet Union itself demands a share, not as restitution, but as victors' spoils. Then there are the individuals, survivors, refugees, displaced persons living in camps across occupied Germany. A woman from Budapest shows a photograph of her mother wearing a ring, gold, with an inset ruby. Is it in the suitcases? No way to know. The rings are not catalogued by appearance, only by weight. She is not the only one. Thousands come forward, each with a story, each with a loss, none with proof, returning what can be returned. The Allied Control Council, the Joint Occupation Authority, establishes protocols. Institutional gold is prioritized. By late 1945, the Banque de France receives 1,174 bars from Merkers, not its full reserves, but a portion. Belgium gets 832 bars. The Netherlands, 420. These numbers are negotiated, debated, adjusted based on pre-war records and post-war politics. The art is easier, marginally. Captain Posey and the Monuments Men work through 1945 and into 1946, matching paintings to museum inventories. The Kaiser Friedrich works go back to Berlin, or rather to the Soviet sector of Berlin, since the city is now divided. Works looted from France are returned to the Louvre, to Versailles, to private collectors who can prove ownership. But returned is a loose term. Some works are kept by the Allies as protective custody. Others are traded, sold, or simply lost in the bureaucratic shuffle. And the SS suitcases? The personal effects? In July 1945, they are turned over to the Jewish Restitution Successor Organization, a body created specifically to handle heirless property, assets whose owners are confirmed dead and who left no surviving family. The JRSO distributes some items to Jewish aid organizations. Some go to museums as evidence. Some are sold, the proceeds used for refugee resettlement. But this is not justice, it is triage. A wedding ring returned to a museum display case is not returned to the hand that wore it. A painting rehung in a gallery is not rehung in the home it was taken from. The gap between restitution and restoration is unbridgeable. By 1949, the formal restitution process is largely complete. Official reports declare approximately 90% of identifiable institutional assets returned. The remaining 10%, unclaimed, disputed, or unaccounted for, enters a legal and moral limbo that persists for decades. The Merkers' gold did not buy justice. It bought a reckoning. Incomplete, imperfect, but undeniable. The question was never whether the treasure could be recovered. The question was whether the victors could bear the weight of what they found. While Americans counted bars in Merkers, Soviet soldiers were making their own discoveries and keeping quieter about it. April 1945, Eastern Germany. The Red Army advances through Saxony, Brandenburg, Silesia, territories that will soon become the Soviet occupation zone. Along the way, Soviet troops find their own caches. Eisleben, 40 kilometers east of Merkers. April 15, 1945. Red Army engineers discover a sealed mine shaft. Inside, gold bars, currency, art. The quantity is not disclosed in Soviet reports. Western intelligence estimates place it between 20 and 40 tons, smaller than Merkers but significant. The treasure is loaded onto trains and shipped east. Destination: Moscow. The Soviet Union does not announce the discovery publicly until 1947, and even then provides no detailed inventory. Königsberg, now Kaliningrad, Russia. January-April 1945. The Prussian city is besieged, then captured. Soviet forces loot systematically, not chaotically, but with coordination. Museum collections, university archives, bank vaults. The Amber Room, the famed 18th century chamber looted by the Nazis from the Catherine Palace near Leningrad, is rumored to be hidden in Königsberg. It is never found. But other treasures are: Prussian state gold, historical artifacts, private collections, all disappear into Soviet custody. Berlin itself. May 1945. After the fall of the Reichstag, Soviet troops occupy the remains of government buildings. The Reichsbank headquarters on Jägerstrasse, already bombed, already evacuated, still contains documents, residual currency reserves, safety deposit boxes. Soviet commanders order the building secured. NKVD, Soviet secret police, moves in. What they find, what they take, is not shared with the Western Allies. The Soviet approach to Nazi plunder differs from the American, where the U.S. emphasizes transparency, documentation, legal restitution. The USSR treats captured assets as war reparations. Stalin's position is clear. The Soviet Union suffered the most in the war, 27 million dead, entire cities destroyed, industries ruined. If the Red Army finds treasure, it is compensation, not theft. There is logic to this. Brutal logic, but logic. Germany invaded the USSR. Germany destroyed Soviet towns, enslaved Soviet citizens, looted Soviet resources. Why should the USSR return what it captures? But this creates a problem for joint Allied policy. The treasure found in the Soviet zone, and there is a great deal of it, does not go through the Allied Control Council. It does not get inventoried by joint commissions. It does not participate in restitution protocols. It simply goes east. Western intelligence tries to track it. Reports are filed. Estimates are made. But the Iron Curtain is already descending, in Churchill's phrase. By 1946, the Soviet zone is effectively closed to Western observers. What the Red Army found, how much and where it went, remains opaque. Some Soviet discoveries are later acknowledged. In the 1990s, after the USSR collapses, Russian archives released documents confirming that substantial quantities of art, gold, and cultural property taken from Germany are still held in Moscow museums and state repositories. Some pieces are returned, small gestures toward post-Cold War reconciliation. Most remain. The Merkers treasure, because it was found in the Western zone, became a symbol of transparency and legal process. But Merkers was not the whole story. It was the part of the story the West could tell. The other part, the mines, vaults, and caches in the Soviet zone, became secrets. Some remain secrets still. Victory divided the spoils. The Cold War decided who got to write the receipt. Official records accounted for 90% of the Merkers gold. Unofficially, everyone wondered about the rest. Frankfurt, August 1948. 3 years after the war's end, General Lucius D. Clay, military governor of the American occupation zone, orders a comprehensive audit of all Nazi assets recovered by U.S. forces. The audit is prompted by persistent rumors: gold missing, currency unaccounted for, discrepancies in ledgers. Congress wants answers. So does the press. The audit team is led by Lieutenant Colonel William H. Bernstein, a lawyer in civilian life, now assigned to the Office of Military Government. His task: reconcile what was found with what was recorded, and what was recorded with what was returned. The work takes 6 months. The findings are released in February 1949, in a document known as the Clay Report. The audit covers April 8, 1945, through December 31, 1948, a span of 44 months. Total assets initially recorded at Merkers: 8,198 gold bars, 102.3 metric tons, 3,682 bags foreign currency, estimated value $4.2 million 1945 USD, 55 crates bullion, 8.2 metric tons, 214 artworks, 8 suitcases, SS deliveries, weight unrecorded, and approximately 800 kilograms of Reichsbank documents. Total transported to Frankfurt, April 16, 1945, matching initial count per convoy manifest. Subsequent audit at Frankfurt, April 20, 1945, 8,191 bars recorded, 7 bars short. Currency bags recounted, 3,661 bags, 21 bags short. Art recount, June 1945, WWII of 206 pieces, 8 pieces unaccounted for. By December 1948, total restitution completed. 7,384 gold bars returned to claimant nations, 90.1%, 3,102 currency bags returned, 85.4%, 1,089 artworks returned, 89.9%. Unaccounted totals, 814 gold bars, 10.2 metric tons, value approximately 11.4 million, 1949 USD, 559 currency bags, 117 artworks. Additional discrepancies, minor weight variations in individual bars, attributed to assay differences, 34 bars initially classified as Reichsbank Institutional, later reclassified as SS Melma Origin, dental gold recast, 12 currency bags found to contain counterfeit notes, Nazi forgery operation, not genuine foreign currency. Clay Report conclusion. Substantial majority of assets recovered and restituted. Remaining discrepancies attributable to wartime record-keeping errors, combat conditions during transport, and probable minor theft by individuals not identified. Probable minor theft. The phrase is carefully chosen. The Clay Report does not accuse specific personnel. It does not claim organized looting, but it acknowledges the obvious. In the chaos of April-May 1945, with soldiers handling unimaginable wealth, some of it disappeared. How? Theories abound. Theory 1. Combat losses. During the Frankfurt convoy, truck near 14 had a blown tire. 2 hours stopped at Fulda. Guards dispersed. Could bags have been taken then? Possible, but unlikely. Captain Kahn maintained tight perimeter security. Theory 2. Accounting errors. The initial Merkers count was conducted under floodlights, 2,000 feet underground, by soldiers not trained as accountants. Mistakes were inevitable. A bar miscounted. A bag logged twice or not at all. The Frankfurt recount showed 7 bars short, but were they stolen or never there? Theory 3. Deliberate concealment. Some assets were never intended for official records. The SS suitcases were logged by number 8, not by weight or contents. Could there have been more suitcases, removed before the official count? Captain Posey's art catalogue notes discrepancies between Reichsbank manifests and physical inventory. Works listed but not found, or found but not listed. Theory 4. Theft by occupation forces, not during the convoy, but later. Frankfurt, 1945 and 1948. The Reichsbank building was guarded but not impenetrable. Personnel rotated. Access protocols were sometimes lax. A bar here, a bag there, over 3 years, it adds up. The Clay Report does not resolve these theories. It presents numbers, notes gaps, and moves on. By 1949, the priority is no longer perfect accounting. It is closing the books and returning sovereignty to a new German government. But the question lingers. 10%. 10 metric tons of gold, over 100 artworks, 500 bags of currency. Where did they go? Some certainly were stolen. Small-scale theft by individuals, soldiers, clerks, guards, who saw an opportunity and took it. A wedding ring pocketed. A currency bag opened, a few bills removed. Not organized crime, but opportunistic crime. Human crime. Some were lost to bureaucracy. Paperwork misfiled. Crates mislabeled. Assets transferred between jurisdictions, American to British to French, with records not properly updated. And some, this is the darkest theory, were never meant to be found. Deliberately hidden by Nazi officials before the Americans arrived. Buried in tunnels not yet discovered. Sealed in vaults whose locations died with their custodians. The 10% became legend. Treasure hunters searched the Thuringian forests for decades, armed with metal detectors and fragmentary maps. They found nothing. Or if they did, they never reported it. The Merkers' treasure was recovered, but it was never complete. Merkers' mine closed in 1993. but the tunnels still remember what came down and what went back up. Merkers, Germany, present day. The Kaiserode mine is now the Erlebnisbergwerk Merkers, the Merkers Adventure Mine, a tourist attraction. Visitors pay a fee, descend in the old elevator cages, walk the salt crystal tunnels, and visit the chamber where the vault once stood. There is a museum. Photographs from April 1945. Eisenhower, Bradley, Patton standing beside gold bars, newspaper clippings, a few reproduction currency bags, a timeline on the wall, neat and pedagogical. Children on school trips take notes. The actual vault door is gone, removed after the war, its steel likely melted and repurposed. The chamber itself is empty now, just salt walls and floodlights. But the tour guides tell the story. They know it well. 100 tons of gold, the treasure of the Third Reich. Found by the Americans. Returned to its rightful owners, most of it. The guides do not emphasize the 10%. They mention it, briefly, in passing. A footnote. The main story is discovery and recovery. Victory. Justice. The ending people want. But some visitors ask, where did the missing gold go? The guides shrug. Lost to history. Maybe still buried. Maybe taken. No one knows for sure. In the 1980s, before the mine became a museum, historians interviewed the last living witnesses. A handful of Merkers villagers who remembered 1945. Most were children then. They recalled trucks at night, soldiers, fear. They did not see the gold. Civilians were not allowed near the mine entrance once the Americans secured it. One man, interviewed in 1987, age 72, remembered the French women who informed the MPs. He did not know their names. They left Merkers in 1946, he thought, repatriated to France. Or maybe they stayed in Germany. He wasn't sure. They were just two women in a village full of displaced people. They disappeared into the current of refugees, survivors, and ghosts that moved through Europe in the war's aftermath. Werner Veick died in 1979 in a small town in Bavaria. His obituary listed his career: civil servant, Reichsbank employee, retired. It did not mention Merkers. His family, wife, 2 daughters, knew he had been there, knew he had been interrogated. But he did not speak of it. He kept the ledgers of his life private. Captain Robert Posey returned to the United States in 1946, resumed his architecture practice in Alabama, and never spoke publicly about the monument's work. He died in 1977. PFC Lincoln Kirstein became one of the most influential figures in American ballet, co-founding the New York City Ballet with George Balanchine. In his memoirs, published in 1994, he devoted 3 pages to Merkers. He wrote, "We found art. We also found evidence of what art cannot redeem." Sergeant Bill Thompson, who led the first descent into the mine, returned to Pennsylvania, worked in a coal mine for 30 years, and died in 1989. He gave one interview in 1985 to a local newspaper. He said, "We thought we found a treasure. Turns out we found a crime scene." The treasure was real. The crime was real. The recovery was real. The restitution was partial. The justice was incomplete. This is not a failure of effort. The Allies tried. Commissions were formed. Protocols were established. Assets were traced, verified, returned. Thousands of hours, thousands of pages of documentation, millions of dollars in administrative costs. The machinery of restitution turned for years. But machinery cannot restore what was incinerated. A gold bar returned to Belgium does not resurrect the person whose wedding ring was melted to make it. A painting rehung in the Louvre does not bring back the family whose home it was stolen from. Restitution closes accounts. It does not resurrect the dead. The Merkers' discovery was not the end of the Nazi theft. It was the moment when victory had to define itself, not by conquest, but by what it chose to do with the ruins of evil. And what it chose was imperfect, incomplete, human. The tunnels are still there, 2,000 feet down, the salt walls, glittering and cold. The elevator still works, carrying tourists instead of gold. The mine remembers. Not in the way people remember, with emotion, with narrative, but in the way stone remembers, by enduring, by being. Above ground, Merkers is a quiet village, farms, a church, a few shops. The war is 80 years past. The generation that lived it is nearly gone. The gold is scattered now, some in national reserves, some in private hands, some still lost, some never found. What remains is the question, not was the treasure recovered? That question has an answer. Mostly. But what do we do with the ruins of evil? That question remains open. It asks itself again in every generation, in every conflict, in every moment when power must decide whether to take or to return, to hoard or to share, to remember or to forget. The Merkers mine is a museum now. Museums are where we keep the past at a safe distance, labeled, lit, explained. But the past does not stay in museums. It leaks out. It asks to be answered. The treasure was found. The treasure was counted. The treasure was divided. And underneath the treasure, always, the graves. But there is one more thing. In 2019, a construction crew renovating a building in downtown Frankfurt, ironically 2 blocks from the old Reichsbank headquarters, broke through a basement wall that wasn't on any blueprint. Behind it, a small room, sealed since 1945. Inside, they found a metal box, rusted, locked. When German authorities finally opened it, they discovered 23 gold coins, Swiss francs from the 1930s, and a handwritten ledger page. The writing was faint, water-damaged, but legible. It listed 12 names. 11 had been crossed out. The 12th name was circled 3 times in red ink. Next to it, in the margin, someone had written a single word in German: unfinished. The authorities never released the names publicly. The box, the coins, and the ledger page are now stored in the Federal Archives in Berlin, classified under a reference number that does not appear in any public database. Officially, the discovery was logged as items of historical interest, origin uncertain. Unofficially, 3 separate investigations were quietly launched and just as quietly closed. No conclusions were ever made public. The tunnels under Merkers still descend into darkness, but so do the tunnels under Frankfurt and Berlin and 100 other cities across Europe. Some of them have been sealed for 80 years. Some of them were never mapped. And some of them, perhaps, are still waiting. The treasure was found. But history doesn't end when the vault opens. It ends when the last question stops being asked, and no one has stopped asking.